Hello everyone and welcome to another incredible game from round 4 of this year's London Chess Classic. It is Hans Niemann versus Shreyas Royal. We've already covered a game by Shreyas. It was against Thomas Bertzen and it featured the Evans Gambit. So if you haven't seen that one, it will be the first link in the description below. Quite a lovely game. But now let's get to this one. But before we check out the game, I would just like to mention a few things regarding the previous video. Some of you said that I've used a clickbait thumbnail for the previous video because this was my thumbnail. And it's sort of probably just my imagination. I kind of thought everyone knew what it meant, and that people just use Twitter, as on Twitter you can receive news directly from the people who create the news. But the point of the thumbnail was that Wesley So tweeted "Good evening, Anish," and the point of the tweet was he saw Gukesh's position, and if Gukesh wins this tournament, he overtakes both Wesley and Anish on the FIDE circuit list, and he qualifies for the FIDE Candidates Tournament 2024. So Wesley first tweeted "Good evening, Anish" with the position that Gukesh currently had, and it was a winning position. So that Wesley said to Anish, Anish, we're just out of the competition. But then after Gukesh blundered, Anish retweeted Wesley's tweet, and he replied "Good evening, Wesley," so saying that no, we are still very much in the game, and that's why I've shown you the game with this thumbnail. So that was the idea. If some of you actually thought that this was some sort of a clickbait, I really had no intention of doing that. It was actually very well planned out, or so I thought. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. The other thing, as some of you have asked this in the comment section, why isn't Hans Niemann's rating updated for December? I have no idea. Probably as the registration for the tournament happened with the already established rating from the month November. That's why it's still 2667, even though on the live ratings list he's actually 2695 point something. But yeah, okay, what are you gonna do? Maybe in January they update it. Maybe he will already be 2700. But that being said, let's check out this very nice game. We'll feature a very nice pause the video moment for you. So Hans has the white pieces, and he opened with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5, knight of 3, knight to c6, and now bishop to c4. Shreyas goes for bishop to c5, and he might have already had an idea that Hans might also go for the Evans Gambit like Thomas Bertzen played against him, but no, Hans goes for the main line, d3, the Giuoco Pianissimo of the Giuoco Piano. We have knight to f6, and now castles. So all fairly standard stuff. We have pawn to d6, c3, and now a6 is sort of the main line in castles, but we have pawn to a5, stopping b4, and yeah, sorry about that. And rook to e1. And I always mention when we have this position, because we have it quite a lot, it's the top main line of the Giuoco Piano. Why doesn't the black go knight to g4 here and just try to punish this rook to e1 move? Because white's rook would actually be very well placed on e2. Because how does black continue? Let's say black castles, he will play h3, so black will also have to waste the tempo, and once black moves the knight, now you're just going to play d4, and you don't have to worry about g4, you've already played h3 with tempo, and the rook is actually very well placed on e2, as you'll see in the game, because in the game castles was played, we have pawn to h3, stopping bishop g4, and now pawn to h6, knight b to d2, going for the standard maneuver. The knight, might come to f5 or h5, depending on what black plays. Bishop to e6, challenging the bishop here, and bishop to b5. So this is all, again, very standard stuff, thousands of games in the database. When I say thousands, I mean probably like 120. So queen to b6, going for this maneuver, queen to a7, putting pressure on the f2 pawn, and knight to f1. We have queen to a7, and now Hans plays rook to e... the top played move is bishop to e3, rook to e2 is the second most played, so everything is perfectly fine here. But even if black did not force the rook on e2, in the other line that we've shown, the rook still comes to e2, and it will be perfectly fine here. So here, pawn to a4, freeing up the a5 square for the black queen to attack the bishop to force a trade on c6, and Hans just goes knight to g3, as I've said, all been played before. Now, there is a game, instead of this, for example, knight to g3 move, that d4 was played. Peter Svidler played it against Pavel Ilyanov, and they drew their game, but here Hans goes knight to g3, we have queen to a5, and now captures on c6. We have b captures, and now d4 can be played here, bishop to d2 can be played here, and also rook to c2. As there aren't that many games in the database, I really allowed the engine to crunch the numbers here just to see how prepared Hans was, and indeed d4, bishop to d2, and rook to c2 are the three top engine choices, and the engine says, yeah, they're all three are equally fine. So Hans goes for rook to c2, and now there is a game that Miguel Santos Ruiz played against Nikita Meshkovs this year in Bundesliga in March, where the game continued with king to h7. But here we have rook f to b8, and it is now as of move 15 that we have a completely new game, so a very, very long theoretical struggle. And now, what's the idea? How does rook to b8 fight against pawn to d4? Because the rook to c2, if the position opens up, the rook gains control of the c file, the doubled c pawn might be in trouble. Well, the idea is that if d4, bishop to b6, and now of course you're not going to open up the c file for the white rook. So Hans played pawn to c4. He grabbed more space here, controls d5, and now Shreyas goes for queen to b6, puts pressure on b2, but mainly puts pressure on the f2 pawn. Hans defends it, queen to e2, now king to h7. We have rook to b1, preparing that pawn to b4 push whenever it becomes possible. Queen to a7, as you don't want your queen on the same file as the white rook here. And now bishop to d2. Again, fighting for that b4 square. We have bishop to b6, and now finally pawn to b4. Okay, Shreyas captures it, a captures on b3, en passant, a captures on b3, and now pawn to c5. Grabbing more space here, sort of weakening the d5 square, but it's not really an issue. You don't really imagine any of the knights here reaching that d5 square. Okay, you could play knight f1, knight to e3, knight to d5, but you know from experience that this knight belongs on the king side, controls the f5 square, the other knight comes to h4 and then to f5, and you have some lovely pressure against the black king. Also, one of the reasons Shreyas played king to h7 is to add more support, so you don't have to worry about all of these sacrifices. So here we have knight to h4. Hans continues as one would in the Giuoco Piano, and now knight to g8. The knight again will be very useful here, serving as a defender of the h6 pawn, and Hans opens up the position with pawn to f4. And it's very nice that the position is blocked here, otherwise you would have trouble opening up this diagonal. So e captures on f4, bishop captures, and now rook to e8, putting pressure on the white queen here, indirectly sort of x-raying. And now you have to decide, do you start grabbing hold of the f file, or do you play bishop to d2? The move Hans played, sort of shifting the bishop to this diagonal, and Shreyas has to decide how to go about this. He plays pawn to c6. He wants to play d5 and d4 to close up this position, or to get some trades in the center, which will also be very good for him because he will open up this diagonal. So okay, Hans goes knight g to f5, and now we have pawn to d5, striking in the center, bishop to c3, provoking d4, and Shreyas goes for it. And serves both ways, to be honest. It does take away this beautiful diagonal from Hans's bishop, but it does closes this diagonal for the black queen and the black bishop. So both this bishop and the queen bishop combo will have to find, their use on a different diagonal. So okay, after d4 we have bishop back to d2, and now bishop to c7. Now you can even play something like bishop to b8, maybe queen to c7, maybe put pressure on the h2 pawn, or you will play put a queen on b8, have a different kind of pressure. All depends on what Hans plays. So he goes queen f3, and now pawn to g6, just kicking away the knight. And now the point is, if you go back, let's say knight to g3, then bishop to d8 is very annoying, attacking the knight. If the knight comes to f5 now, you will play queen to b8. And now once b4 is played, you don't care. You're just going to play bishop back to c7, put more pressure here, and you cannot capture on c5 because the rook is undefended on b1. So you're going to play b5, and now you will accept the knight. So g captures, knight captures, and after, let's say, queen to d8, you have to set up some sort of a defensive perimeter here. Queen to h5, queen to f6, defending against everything on h6 as the bishop, queen, and knight are eyeing it. And now let's say pawn to b6, attacking the bishop, bishop b8, and if rook to f1, you will simply move the queen to g6, black defense, and black will win this game. So that's the idea if Hans just moves the knight. So Hans doesn't move the knight, he plays pawn to g4. He goes after the black king, and that will most often be the case if you try your hand at the Giuoco Piano. And now after g4, bishop to d8. Now capturing wouldn't be all that impressive. If you decided to capture now, then the bishop is out of the game and will be very unpleasant. With perfect play, it's still a draw, but as I always say, with perfect play, everything is a draw. So bishop to d8 by Shreyas, and now knight back to g2. We have g captures on f5. Now Shreyas accepts the knight sacrifice. G captures on f5, and the bishop back to c8. So now Hans has to hurry up with the attack, as all of these pieces aren't really doing all that much, but if they get activated, the extra piece will definitely mean a whole lot. So king to h1, Hans announces the doubling of the rooks on the g file, and you have to set up some sort of a defense against it. The queen to e7 was played. Now comes rook to g1. We have bishop to c7, and now queen to h5. Now putting pressure on the black king. And here, well, it's a very unpleasant position, but we have bishop to e5, and here Hans is completely winning, but there is only one move that forces the immediate win. If you miss it, then black will be able to set up a defense. Black will have enough time. So, make use of the tempo. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Hans while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always getting to the bottom of every position. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is knight to h4. And okay, you probably realize why you're going to go to f3 and then to g5, but even the tactics are not enough. You have to play it now, because let's say you play something like rook b2, you prepare b4, you want to do something. Once black plays queen f8 and defends the h6 pawn with the queen, then the knight can be activated and your attack is gone. Now if you play knight to h4, doesn't matter, just knight to f6 and the position holds. The queen is attacked, the queen has to go back. So knight to h4 just in time. So knight to h4, and now how do you play? Now queen f8 is not enough. If you play queen to f8 now, then comes knight to f3, and now knight to f6 attacking the queen just runs into knight to g5 check. That's the problem. King to h8, or you go under the mask of the rook. King to h8, and now you're going to play knight captures on f7 with check, and that's it. You either give up the queen or you go here, and then queen to g6 is checkmate. So that's why the tempo was crucial there. Rook to a7 was played by Shreyas, grabbing hold of the 7th rank, and now knight back to f3, attacking the bishop, but also going for knight to g5 check. So bishop to g7, and now bishop to f4. Final improvement before, putting that final nail in the coffin. We have queen to f8, sorry, bishop to f8, and now comes rook captures on g8. This is a beautiful move as it sets up a double rook sacrifice, so we're going to do it in slow motion as we usually do. And you have to take the rook, otherwise you're just down too much material and you're going to get checkmated. So king captures on g8, now rook to g2 with check. And if you go king to h7, the problem is after queen g4, there's no stopping checkmate. You can't move the bishop, so the rook controls g8, and you can't play this because this is mate. There's no move you can make here. So instead, after rook to g2, bishop to g7 was played, but now Hans sacrifices the other rook as well. Rook captures on g7, king captures, and now bishop captures on h6 with check, where you either get checkmated or you win the black queen. Point is, if king to g8, then queen to g4 check, king to h8, and queen to g7 will be checkmate. So after bishop captures on h6, king to h7 was played, but now you're under the mask of the queen, bishop to e7, and you win the black queen. King to g8 was played, bishop captures on e7, rook e captures on e7, and now pawn to f6. And he was in this position on move 45 that Shreyas resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Your rook is hanging, but also you have bigger problems here. So if you decided to continue the game, just e5. And black has 0 moves here. The bishop, no moves, rook, no moves. This rook, okay, this rook can give a few checks, maybe rook a1 check, king g2, rook a2 check, but now you're just getting checkmated, whatever you play. Let's say rook to e2. Queen h6 with queen to g7 checkmate next, unstoppable. You could, of course, prolong it with some silly moves, but we don't show those kind of moves on this channel. Yeah, after f6, Hans wins his first game of the London Chess Classic, so 3 draws, then a win, and we'll see who he faces in round 5. Or, yeah, we're not going to see, I'm going to tell you who he faces, so let me just check. I was mostly focusing on who Gukesh will face, but Hans in round 5 will face Amin Tabatabai. And interestingly, for Gukesh, it will be a very, very tough round because he faces the leader of the tournament. Michael Adams is currently leading the tournament with 3 out of 4. Then we have 3 people on 2 out of 4, Gukesh, Hans Niemann, and Gilles Moussard. Gukesh faces the leader, Michael Adams, and get this, in the final round, Gukesh will face Hans Niemann. So if it's going to be, up to the final round, whether Gukesh qualifies for the candidates tournament or not, it will be Hans Niemann standing between Gukesh and the candidates tournament, which is, I mean, more than we can ask for in a chess world, such excitement. So yeah. That's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nice showing by Hans, by Shreyas as well. But even though he played everything perfectly, he knew the theory. He held his own for some 20 moves. Then he even got a better position, but he just wasn't able to exploit it to its fullest. And it was enough for Hans to get an attack going. And then after that, it was merely using the prowess of your combinations to take down your opponent. So once again, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank David Gasparian, Sigurdsson Wilhelmsson, Grogoing Gnome, the Maximite Chess Club, and the Hoagie Boy on Spotify for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And I think it's actually pronounced Hooga Boy, so sorry about that. See you soon.